Okay, we are live for the next edition of the Data Value Show. Really pleased to have Aaron Martin Post on today's show, where we're discussing increasing value by decreasing friction. So without further ado, welcome, Aaron.
Hello, Chris. Hello, anyone who's watching on this lovely Monday morning. Let's get right into it. It's 9 a.m. for me.
Have you had your coffee? Are you ready to go?
I've had 2 cups.
I'm actually on my second can of Coke, but I've give my sugar rush to get going as well. So thank you very much for coming on the show. I've been an admirer of your posts for a while. We spoke a little while ago, I think when you just left ThoughtSpot. So maybe start off a bit of background about yourself, what you're doing now, and a bit about your journey, maybe.
Yeah, definitely happy to share. I feel like it's really common in tech to see that a lot of people have very different backgrounds. So I'm another one of those people. Educationally, I studied industrial organizational psychology, which is a mouthful. But basically, that's like, instead of a psychologist for a person, it's psychology for like a whole business of people. So how do people work together? And that is a lot of what I still continue to be influenced by in work today. After that, I worked as a data analyst, primarily in business intelligence for about 5 years, used Tableau, Alteryx, things like that. Worked at Wells Fargo, Best Buy, another smaller company. After that, I had a hiatus. I had a stroke in 2020, that's a whole other life journey. But with that, it kind of allowed me to take time to reset, like, what do I really want to do with my career? I missed the psychology side of it. So I got into solutions engineering. I worked at ThoughtSpot for about 2 years, where you get to do like proofs of value with a lot of prospects and things like that. After that, I was part of an unfortunate round of layoffs at ThoughtSpot. And now I'm working as a data advocate for a company called Shipyard, which is data orchestration. So
cool. And I think you touched on, and everyone's journey is brilliant how we all come into it, because data is just what brings us all together. And the technology part is actually the easiest part. It's the people and understanding how they work. And we had a big session the other day with Scott Taylor about the storytelling, which we can cover a little bit as well later. But understanding how people work together is a very useful skill in this world where we're trying to add value from the data. And we were just having a little chat in the back room about technologies and everyone liking to use the latest and greatest tech, but weren't always focused on where that was going to provide the value. So I think your work at ThoughtSpot's interesting. We might come back to. In fact, we might go straight into that. So dashboards are dead. There was a billboard that came out the other day. It's been ThoughtSpot's marketing for a while. There was a really interesting post that someone did the other day saying that it's like saying that newspapers are dead. And I've got a view on that, which I can share in a minute. But I'd love to know your view of. Is it just a marketing spin, or are dashboards dead?
I think it's a bit of both, because, one, it's stuck in people's heads. Like, people associate that with ThoughtSpot. So in terms of like how well did marketing do, it did really well, because that tagline has stuck around, and they've been on that for like 2 years now for marketing. And if you think about it, like in product, we don't call it a dashboard. It's called a live board. So in a way, it's like, it's not dead. It's a live board. So like literally, if you think about the product itself and what things are called, like it makes sense from that perspective. And it is a live board because it live queries directly from whatever cloud platform you're using. And then also it's live because it's not built static. Like, it doesn't have predefined filters or anything like that. So end users can just drill down into data wherever they want to. There are like guardrails set because you build a worksheet that powers it. So you pick certain columns that they can use or not use. It's not like they have willy-nilly access to the data warehouse, but it does give them some more power of usability instead of this constant back and forth between the data team and an end user being like, well, can you add this filter or can you add this chart? Like they can start to do some of those like nitty gritty annoying things themselves.
Yeah, and I think that leads very nicely into this friction concept. So we use internally the term friction as the time, complexity, and effort in performing an activity. And if you're able to see how often those things are happening and how much friction they are, it'll help you understand, where you can look to optimize your business processes. And what I really like, I'd worked in this BI world, and I won't go into my history, but I started with Cognos, so I've always understood dashboards and how they work. But I knew it was a long time to go and get them created. So you'd have to do the data modeling, and then it would go through another piece of release. Then after that, the user would get to see it and go, yeah, but wouldn't it be great if I could just add this other column onto this one, or add this other measure onto it. And it was quite restrictive in that playback cycle, and that slowed the customer getting exactly what they wanted. So I really love ThoughtSpot from its way of accelerating that process. From a services point of view, it's not as good because we don't hire people out to go and build dashboards, but we're all about accelerating that route to the ultimate business value, which generates more use cases to go and prep the data, bring it in. I think there was a post that someone did about a picture of a newspaper, and they said, dashboards are dead. If dashboards dead, a newspaper's dead. I tried to use a different analogy of it. Is that, the newspaper's still there. Just consider that your live board, that first page, page one. But what happens then is each other page is auto-generated by what interested you on that first page. So it becomes more of a dynamic newspaper of dashboards or content. But you're not having to wait for that journalist to go back and write the next papers or pages you want. You can self-serve that capability. So, yeah, I think you're right. It's a mixture of good marketing with a change of mindset. The search bar approach I really like, and we're all moving more and more to the world of just prompts. Being a prompt engineer is now a role. So being able to help people search for that data is become a role and a capability that people need to supply with generative AI. So it'd be interesting to see. Maybe that's nice, leads really nice onto. So generative AI, everyone's talking about it. I think ThoughtSpot were quite ahead with regards to starting with that search-based concept, or asking a question and it translating that into actions. So where do you see generative AI helping? Maybe where you're working at the moment, or maybe where you think in the future, and other parts of data pipelines.
I think generative AI from a BI perspective is helping get end users, or of whatever level of technical ability, closer and closer to the language they naturally speak. So like NLP, like they don't necessarily want to ask questions in SQL or some other language. So it's just, ThoughtSpot was built on natural language querying, which is a little bit different in that like certain terms and way of wording things like automatically translated into SQL. So there was that mapping. But like to truly just like write however you would write and then have it understand is like the next step. And I know they've done work on that with Sage. That was something as I was going out that was released. And so I think where it's going is like truly enabling people to talk to data in a natural language sense. And that will be super powerful in terms of reducing the tedious workload that a lot of like BI analysts and other analysts have, of just like, basically, I'm like your personal data assistant.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
think people necessarily need to have personal data assistants when you get to the true like actual like data exploration and like insights phase where like they're exploring it themselves.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. I think you're right. I think there's a couple other areas that I'm seeing is which is aligned to that, but it's the creation of business rules. So to have to go and by translating or some standard words in a normal written naturally, what you want to achieve in business rules, and it writing the rule for you, in the same way as ThoughtSpot creating a visualization for you. But it's all about that mapping of the associated metadata to the language we speak, to the actions or the code that needs to be generated. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I definitely think I think that autopilot sort of approach, or that assistance, your term you used, is it's not going to take over our life and go. Maybe autopilot's where we're heading, but maybe it's assistant we're at the moment on that
mhm.
journey.
I also think another aspect of BI that, or at least I've seen this with Figma, but not so much BI yet, is the design aspect.
Hmm.
Because I remember working in Tableau and everything needed to be, especially like Wells Fargo, like everything needed to be perfectly
Yep,
on
pixel perfect.
brand, not just in colors, but like there's a certain format, certain
Yep.
layout. And in terms of using generative AI to get it to look the correct way,
Hmm.
because at least any Tableau user will know like it's extremely
Yep.
tedious. It's
Yep.
like containers within containers, and I spent many hours doing that instead of doing data work. And so
And
I think it would be interesting to see if something like the assistant
yeah.
in Figma can translate into BI visualization.
So it's really interesting, and it's something that I've experienced before. But back in the days of the Cognos reporting, whereas I used to get my hands dirty, Reportlet and Cognos up to 10, 11, maybe 12. It's up to now. I don't know where it's got to, but you used to spend loads of times working out how to get to not spill over pages, to do page breaks in the right place, to have things be centered, things be, as you say, the right font, the right form. Yeah, you're right. It was a large overhead, and sometimes what you were doing, you're working within limits of the product to go and
Yep.
make it look like where you wanted. You know what
Mhm.
you wanted to do, but you go, oh, I can't go and get that unless I put that into a repeating segment that I then go and put another font in it with a bit of white space one side, which has got not a set format. It's got a spacing calculation. It was. I remember you brought back nightmares that I've had in the past, but yeah, it was a very poor use of our time, adding very little value, because all people wanted to do was get access that data, and all we're doing is delaying that report getting out because it's not quite pixel perfect yet. Yes, I mean, yeah, that's a really good ThoughtSpot. If you're listening, there you go. That's the next thing you need to add to it is some pixel perfect capabilities to make sure it always looks good as well. Yeah, so we talked about the visualization aspect. So, what about in the creation of mappings for data marts, or creating the business rules for them? Do you think that's an area that will get help from generative AI?
I think it's somewhat safe to say there are very few areas where things like generative AI couldn't assist in some way.
Yeah,
The level of business value of those individual use cases definitely varies. Just because you
yeah,
can do it doesn't mean it's actually helpful or not.
exactly.
Because I think, at least where it stands now, with this being, I mean, I know it's not new, but like relatively new to the boom of all of this happening. Um, I think if we have anything with data marts that is fueled by generative AI, you're still going to have a human check it anyway. So at that point, it's like we're going to have AI do it, but then we're going to also have to do it. And at that point, it's just like proofreading. So really, it's like if you're already spending the time doing that and like fixing mistakes or hunting for mistakes, or, maybe even not just trying to trust it entirely and it being wrong, like I just think at this moment in time, there's still going to be a lot of rework.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you touched on something quite important. There is when the right time to use it, and not to go down the hype cycle of thinking we're going to use generative AI for everything. Let's use it where it is going to add the value. I think I was on the show with Ben Rogen the other day, and he was talking about someone trying to use generative AI to do the bitbox coding game. You know, if you see something divisible by this, do this. You might as well just do Boolean logic. It's a business rule, you know, and there's no point going and training something because it's going to be wrong a lot of the time. Where you could code something that's always going to be right. It's that simple. So, yeah, using it for the right use case is something that anyone out there needs to it needs to be mindful of.
This actually gets into another topic that I know you had wanted to talk about,
Yeah.
of like automation.
Yes.
And how AI can help with that. So, in terms of like automating the process, like that's something we've already been tackling for a long time. Of people will spend way more time automating it than it takes to actually just do it manually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that is the common plight of data people. Of like, well, what if I can just automate this? If I can take 10 hours to just automate this thing that takes 5 minutes.
Exactly.
And like that's now what AI, like adding AI to something is. Well, if I can just add AI, well, it's like, or it's just this manual thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like it's still the same problem of figuring out when it makes sense to automate something and when it makes sense to add AI to something. It's a similar problem, just a new thing.
Exactly, and I think that leads back down to business processes because, and a big we have a big focus at LEIT on business value, but we have a whole concept of some assessment frameworks that we look to see how you're performing, and then remediation activities to increase the value of what you're actually doing or increase your maturity, which unlocks value. And one of the key things there is you've got to be able to measure something to improve it. And with business processes, with orchestration, with automation, there's no point automating something that you don't know what the overall business process is, because you might be automating the wrong piece of the wrong blockage. You know, and I like to use the term, you know, you can just push the problem somewhere else. It's the balloon, the thin balloon effect. You push it here, you just push the problem elsewhere. So until you understand that whole end-to-end business process, there's no point going and just picking on just one part of it. You need to look at, you know, what is the overall process that you're trying to optimize. Yeah, so you bang on. You know, people just jump in and think, oh, I can go and automate this, but is it worth automating?
But it's fun, Chris. It's fun, and I want to have fun when.
I mean, we're all guilty of that. I mean, I'm pretty sure back in the day, I'd probably sit around and optimize an SQL query just to get the cost down because I was bored sometimes. Like, did I really need to? Was there enough headwind on the back then, the Exadata Oracle machine? But did it need to be optimized? Probably not. But I always like to make sure that, you know, I got the best explained plan, which leads on to something else that we've seen in Snowflake. So Snowflake, it's very expensive. It's very hard. Costs a lot to run, but it doesn't have to be. And maybe, you know, some use cases may not be the best ones for it. It may be cheap elsewhere. But, you know, if you don't do things properly, I say heating a house is expensive if you leave your windows and doors open. Right? It doesn't have to be that expensive if you actually do things properly. The term guardrails you used earlier, I like to use that as well. So if you've got the right guardrails in place. So we did something that was called the tuning factory, because one of our clients, we ended up going in and looking at tuning a particular query. It's taken ages, but how much time we spent and effort looking at that one query, it didn't really matter if it was only run once a month, because the cost of the credits is a lot less than, you know, my time, some of my engineers' time, and the meeting where I had with all the people in it. So, yeah, understanding, you know, where to optimize, where to automate, where to add, where adds that value is critical.
One thing I will say, like my 2 cents, and I know I've never really taken a strong stance on anything to do with Snowflake, because I mean as it is with anything, there's good and there's bad.
Yeah.
But one of the best solutions architects, the best that I know, might as well name drop because you might know him. I don't know. Nick Cooper.
Yeah.
I know I've had a lot of conversations with him on like Snowflake doesn't have to be expensive if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's the problem. A lot of people don't know what they're doing and build all these other processes on top of Snowflake that makes it really expensive. But if you do know what you're doing, it's great.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't, you know where to come.
Or the worst is like if you think you know what you're doing, but you actually don't.
Yeah. And that probably leads quite nicely into it. So there's a few areas that means that Snowflake can, but and I'm not going to talk about warehouse utilization, stuff like that. I'm going to talk about data modeling. And I think probably on the journey of us crossing paths on a LinkedIn post, you've probably seen when I was talking about data modeling probably a couple of years ago now, a year and a half at least. I bring back data modeling because everyone started saying the modern data stack was dead because it doesn't have data modeling. I'm thinking it's not the modern data stack's fault you didn't data model. We were doing that, ages ago. Maybe the people that were in the Hadoop bubble, where it was everything schema on read, you may have forgotten the art of it, but it was always there. And I still see some people out there saying that, dimensional modeling's dead, Kimball's not the way forward, and, there's data. And Joe's doing some great work at the moment. And Serge did a book recently as well. But it's about working out what's the right modelling approach for the right use case at the right maturity. And, understanding that. But having a view that you need to have a data model and actually understanding the data is the key to actually getting better use or better consumption from Snowflake.
That's the thing, like you said, understanding. That sparked a thought of like, I think the practice of modeling data is the best way to understand it.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you get rid of that entire practice, what are you doing to supplement it in order to understand your data?
Yeah.
Like what replaces that? Because you still need to understand it. Otherwise, you're going to accumulate a bunch of junk that you might not need, which goes back into how you end up racking up costs in Snowflake because you have a bunch of stuff you don't need.
Yeah, exactly. You go and spin a 6XL up and you've forgotten if you didn't have the join statement in it, so it's doing a cross join, a Cartesian join across 2 billion row tables. Not that I've ever seen that happen before, but it could.
It could.
So, data modeling. We talked about data contracts is a thing being talked about at the moment. What's your view on data contracts?
I'm gonna be honest, I don't really have that strong of an opinion on data contracts. I read a lot of stuff. Granted, on some of it's on Twitter, and so it was probably about a year ago that it blew up, where it's like every single tweet was about data contracts, and I'm like, I swear, if I see another tweet about data contracts, I'm just gonna have to mute the word because it's just I don't. It was further upstream than like ThoughtSpot's concern. So I'm like, I'm just going to limit my view on that. But I mean, I think it's logical. I don't see why people fight about it as much as they do. Like, I think it makes sense.
I think so. And I think, again, it's we always like to reinvent or come up with these new terms of things that are already there. And it is just a good data model that's been defined as either someone is providing it or someone is actually consuming from it.
That's the other thing. Making up new terms, very anti-business value.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's add more confusion into the mix so people don't work as well together and no one knows what's going on.
Yeah, and I think it's a mix. And I've got a few views on why this happens so much. I mean, one of them is vendors. It's great because vendors, they want to go and sell new products or they've got to differentiate themselves in whatever. So I don't. And the other view is with this whole big data bubble in the modern data stack, we need to keep giving it new names because we have to go and secure budget because the people that were there before said, oh, the last one was a failure. Why is this one going to success? Because it's different this time. It's got a new name. So it's very hard to go and get budget for pretty much the same thing again, but doing it slightly differently. or hopefully learning by your mistakes. But yeah, so it sometimes the world needs a rebranding, which is a necessary evil, but annoying at the same time.
It is. And I gotta have a whole conversation about like terminology of different things and how I think it was like a while ago I was talking to Kevin Hugh about creating a data thesaurus, not
Yeah,
dictionary, a thesaurus of like terms that are
yeah,
all similar that kind of mean the same thing. Like there's a lot of overlap between statistics and machine learning, where like a machine learning term means literally the exact same thing as statistical analysis, but they have like 3 names.
yeah. I've seen the same. I think I'm trying to find the guy's name, but I'll maybe post it in the chat afterwards. There's a guy that's written a book, and it's basically every term that he's found out there, and yeah, there is big overlaps, which I suppose links into quite a few things. But data catalogs, understanding the same terminology in an organisation, and I suppose linked down to automation. So whenever you're automating something, you need to know what you're automating, and if that's crossing many departments, many parts of the business, you need to make sure that you're talking the right language to each of them. So we've obviously you're working at Shipyard at the moment. What are you doing there that is helping in this orchestration world?
So, right now, I've been writing a series called Simplifying Data Orchestration
Mm-hmm.
because to sound businessy, what differentiates Shipyard in the market
Mm-hmm.
is that it's a low code orchestrator. It doesn't have to be, it's really the best of both worlds. You could write entirely in Python or Bash or Node.js, whatever. But there are low code options that are open source.
Yeah.
And other tools don't really offer that. You pretty much have to write code and there's wrappers.
Mm-hmm.
So with this idea that like Shipyard as a tool allows like the act of orchestrating to be simplified, I wanted to take the concept of data orchestration and break it down. So when you have to do internal selling to other stakeholders of like, why do we need a data orchestrator? Those people aren't necessarily going to be the best at like breaking down the entire concept of orchestrating. So that's what I'm doing with this series, Simplifying Data Orchestration. I've written 4. It's going to be a 6-part series. And I took the framework of asking exploratory questions: who, what, where, when, why, and how.
Yep.
So each one addresses one of those questions around data orchestration. That's my main focus at the moment. I also do a Q&A series where we release a video every week of a topic that we've either seen in our own community or some other Slack community, LinkedIn, where we just pick a question and we answer it. And now we're going to start getting into other types of areas of the data stack. So if you want to say like, what is transformation? And like bringing in other like guests to answer those questions, like from a transformation company like Coalesce or DBT, to have them explain it, because I could explain it, but why not bring in someone who's truly an expert in that area?
That's a really good approach of stringing together the journey. We did a conference last year. It was called Skid, but each of the sessions was to build up that story, and orchestration is a story. You're orchestrating the data's journey from its inception to its consumption across all of its steps on the way. But interesting, because obviously that reduces friction. Once you're stitching these things together, you're reducing that friction. And we talked about business processes earlier as well, and understanding what each of the step is performing, in linking that to a service, because sometimes people need multiple steps. A business has one requirement, but that needs multiple steps. So being able to do that mapping of when someone asks for something in the business using their business terminology of what I want to achieve, it becomes okay. Well, what you actually need is you need this database connection, you need this part of the pipeline, you need these credential, and then wrapping that into a service. Do you see, is that how you're seeing that your customers, or how you expect people to use Shipyard?
Yes. So in terms of, especially if you're using some of the low code blueprints, it should be really obvious from BI to like pulling stuff with Fivetran. You can see the entire process of how things work. Of like, you pull it, it goes into the database, maybe it moves somewhere else, and then there's like some predictive analyses done. Maybe that goes to DBT and there's transformation, and then it moves to the BI tool. And then maybe you want Slack alerts sent once a certain KPI like hits a metric. So it's like you can see the whole process in a UI, and it's done in a way that like a business user not only could understand it, they could actually do it themselves, because there's like hundreds of low code blueprints that we have. And so then when it comes to asking a new question, like let's say, you're in a BI tool and you're like, well, do we have this data? Like, I want to know X, Y, Z about this metric. And so then you can walk through all the way back to like, well, this goes back to, we would have to create a new connection in like Fivetran or whatever our ETL process to pull in that data. And then we would have to map it to our database. And then we would have to make sure that's good with our transformation tool. And then we get to the BI layer.
Yeah.
Which, again, this also helps with reducing friction, because there are some times when businesses just say, can you just add this number real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can actually show that like they can have visibility to see how complicated that actually is to execute.
And that's a really good point. And everyone in business, we've all got our own things we do, and I think we probably underestimate the complexity of other parts of business, and the business underestimates the complexity on our side. And being able to evidence, show, demonstrate when people are requesting something, what actually needs to change and how many teams it actually crosses, is really useful. I mean, we worked for it. We had a client where they were using scaled agile, and there was many parts of the puzzle to actually achieve the ultimate goal, which was getting access to that data for the consumer. But the request that were coming was, I need a database, I need a user with these privileges, then I need to have access to this S3. And to do anything, it was a collection of 25 or 30 different tickets that collectively provided what they wanted, but each ticket was estimated individually. There was no understanding of the order which the things need to be performed in. And linking back to that thing about business services, if they said, I want this recipe baked for me, and what the ingredients are for that recipe, you've given it in the way the business says, I want a cake, and you go, okay, I know what I need to do to make that cake, I'll go and do that for you, rather than you saying, I want an egg, I want some flour. I'm not a big baker, so I can't tell you all the ingredients of what goes into a cake, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So I think the question I've got then, so orchestrating all those pieces, so how does that work into a deployment? So in like a data ops world.
I'm sorry, how does that work in terms of?
Yeah, so you've created this pipeline with, you've created the orchestration, so the Fivetran for bringing the data in, done stuff in Snowflake, you may have automated some other piece as well. How's that fit into like data ops? So you want to be able to release them continuously. Is that part of what you do as well?
So like continuous improvement, continuous development type things. I'm gonna give you the worst canned answer of it depends.
I've used that one many times myself as a consultant, but if it could generate that code that then could be used in any way to how you could automate it, but its main objective is to create the end-to-end visualization, what's happening in the associated code for it.
Correct. Again, like you could bake something like CI/CD into it, but it's not. It doesn't have to be.
No.
I think that's also the beauty of data orchestration, is that it covers so many use cases and so many things that, like, it depends is the most valid answer most of the time. Like, what is your context? What are you trying to accomplish? What does your data look like? What is your business? How many people do you have running lists? What skills do they know? Like, there's so many questions that I think once you get to the orchestration level, orchestration is everything. Like, it's your whole data pipeline. So not only does it touch on like all these different skill sets, but it like touches even more pieces of the business and jobs than I think any other tool. Maybe you could make an argument like observability and orchestration kind of sit in a very similar area. Orchestration is just more actionable, or observability is literally what it says of observe. We just observe it happening.
Yeah, I've beef with observability. I think it's one of those other ones that we've got to create a new name for something. But I like, and I've probably talked about this before, so excuse anyone that's heard me saying this again. But I think they're levels of monitoring, and we've got some questions. We got Sonny's joined. Hi, Sonny. We'll get your question up in a minute. But when we talk about observability, whenever I speak to vendors, I say, "What are you observing?" And no, none of them's exactly the same. And they're all observing valid things, but they're not observing everything. And I don't think there's one product out there that observes everything. And if I was to give you the list of things we want to monitor, which I think collectively make full observability, it's the likes of your infrastructure. So the lowest level is infrastructure. So that's your application performance monitoring, APM, Datadogs, New Relic, Instana as well, by IBM now, being bought by IBM. The next level up is your SaaS products. So now you need to monitor how all the different SaaS products are performing, who's using them, what they're using, availability of them, if there are any downtimes of them as well. Hopefully not, because it's a SaaS product. But the next level is connectivity, which I think very much is in your area, which is it is the orchestration, but it's also the running of it. So it's stitching it all together, the DAG, but then the execution of that. And I think orchestration before, I think what you're seem to be doing at Shipyard is not just that string to tie everything together. You're actually that string and providing the ability to execute what or run or generate what each of the steps it's performing. The likes of Airflow or something, it's just going to give you a hook. You're providing the hook and the code that needs to go underneath it as well.
And like that's most other orchestrators, not just Airflow.
I
mean,
yeah. I wasn't picking off just them. I just
no, I mean like them, Dagster,
Prefect, yeah,
all those other ones. Like they're extrapolating it away from the end user and needing to write. Like you have to write some code, you have to write YAML, like you have to do that. And so then when it comes to explaining and like collaborating with your end users who aren't technical, that adds an extra layer of difficulty to you to explain it to them.
Yeah.
Like Shipyard makes the storytelling of process easier than just trying to talk someone through code.
Yeah. I'll come back to that storytelling because that's another a key thing. I think
we should answer Sonny's question, huh?
Yeah, let's go with Sonny's question. Let's go with it. There we go. So, do you see business wanting to explore and still utilizing orchestration, or do you just do it?
Just do it. So, I mean, businesses wanting to explore and still utilizing orchestration. I guess this question is a bit confusing to me, but I'm gonna assume that's me. I see some, like when I think of like prospect calls that I've been on, so I see a lot of people who maybe are using something like Airflow,
Yep.
or they have a bunch of cron jobs, something like that. Like things have always been orchestrated in some way. It's just never been done until the last few years in as much of like a clean UI. So I see a lot of people who like have some sort of process that you would call orchestration, but they're looking for a better way to do it.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of the prospects that we have. And so yeah, you are just doing it already, probably in some capacity. Or maybe you're a newer company trying to build it out, but that's, that's like greenfield. That's almost the most ideal sales sales area, is being the new product. But a lot of it's just trying to replace and improve old processes. And there's not never, but maybe like they didn't have something in place, or maybe Airflow is just really, really complicated and they want something simpler.
Yeah, and I think it leads on to storytelling, I think, a little bit as well. Is we shouldn't just go and do anything. We should be just providing the art of the possible, demonstrating where it can add more value. And yeah, and I think it comes to storytelling. And I think the you mentioned earlier that you're providing that story of the data's journey, and that story needs to be understood by the business that's the business users.
Yeah, I
So
highly recommend on this topic people read article I wrote called "Why Does Data Orchestration
okay,
Exist?"
yep,
Because I walk through, it's literally a story of an analyst starting at the company, and like their first job is just like, I need to build a dashboard and refresh some of the extracts that
yep,
build it.
yep,
And then they get, as the story goes, it gets deeper and deeper
yeah,
upstream of like, now I have to worry about transformation.
yeah,
Now I have to worry about machine learning. Now I have to worry about getting things from external applications. And
yep,
then you can see there's like all these different calendars and alertings and UIs, and they have to go into each of them.
mm-hmm.
And suddenly their life is just becoming error handling in
Yep,
all these independent tools. So in that sense, like, yeah, you are orchestrating it all, but it's extremely painful and
yep,
awful. Like if only we had this central control tower where we could do all of that.
yeah. I suppose it's great to say, I just want this report, which is the top level story. But underneath that, I had to go and find who owned the data. I had to go and bring the data in. I had to go and do some quality checks in it. I had to go and map it and put the transformation. Then I had to model it in them. You're right, and it's no one actually understands from that one request all those different steps. And I do think the business had probably thought in the past, oh, you're just making it sound more difficult. Oh, yeah, you don't need to do all these things. I could just download it and put it in Excel. Go on, you're just making this stuff up. And of course we can go and download it and put it in Excel, but it may not be accurate. You may make the wrong decision, and inaccurate data makes bad decisions, which can have big consequences.
And then there's also the sense of like continuity of whoever built it might not be there forever. And so you want to have things documented so someone new can come in and take over with as little pain as possible, which is why documentation is so important. I'll add a plug of like, I think generative AI could be really cool if it could help people out in documenting of like, here, I already did this, write documentation.
Yeah, no, I think that is a very good use case for it. Reverse engineering stuff there. I did a post, I think over the weekend, and it was a Doctor Who themed one. So there's a picture of the TARDIS, and someone saying, can you just have a quick look at this SQL script? And it's much bigger than all got into it. Is the the punchline to it? And I think that's the problem. Is whatever we write has to be supported. And having something orchestrating many steps can prevent someone having to write something in one big long procedural code to go and do something, because they didn't have a way of doing the dependencies and actually breaking it up into the bite-sized chunks. And I think anything that gets written needs to be extendable, explainable, and supportable. And if you have that concept when you're writing your blocks of code, and then you had some nice little bit of narrative of the orchestration of the journeys is going on, it's going to be much easier for people to understand, support, extend, enhance over the time.
No, I mean there's added flexibility, but there's also the aspect of speed. It just makes people faster at doing their jobs. I mean, I know it's a common trope to say, move fast and break things, but I just made this up now. Shipyard is move faster, but don't break anything. Get things done more quickly, but you're not breaking anything. If anything, you're fixing whatever.
That fail fast, learn fast, isn't it? But with the added support or guardrails to preventing you getting into that. I had something else coming. I just quickly forgotten now. We were talking about. So you said about speed to market, and that triggered a thought. And stuff we're talking about with Matt over the weekend was competitive advantage. And I've got this focus. We've got this focus on business value, and data being an asset, data being on your books as an asset, which is hard to do with this current world because it's always seen as an OPEX cost, all the associated effort with maintaining it, looking after it. But being able to keep ahead of the game now in this fast-paced environment. We've all seen the top 10 FTSE or top index companies. It's changed over time, and the reason why that's changed over time is speed to market for some of these larger organizations that we used to know, and how Amazon and Snowflake maybe as well, or lots of other companies have been able to take over is their ability to get changes, enhancements out quicker to add more value. So competitive advantage and speed to market is a critical thing.
But I would argue that, granted, different tools and processes that you bring in can help enhance or speed to market, so to say. The important part really is the people side of things.
I was just about exactly. It's not all the technology; it's the people. It's how your teams operate. And again, Amazon was one of the ones that the 2 Pete's or 3 Pete's. Well, companies need to be able to understand what part of the cog they are within the bigger engine, and understand how they interact with everyone, and work out that without them, they all add value in their own way. And each part of the puzzle needs to know, specialize in what it is and how it integrates a contract. The teeth knocking into each other. They all need to reduce friction in that interaction when they're performing each other. And the technology should only help underpin that and help the people part. It shouldn't be the other way around.
I mean, I think of like when I worked at Wells Fargo. I mean, massive company, and I think it's the same in other big banks, where you look at the organizational structure. It's extremely tiered, extremely deep. Everything is like formalities and procedures, and you need to go to this higher up to get to this higher up to get to this higher up. And so in terms of like speed and movement, things take so long to turn the ship. Like, it's just this massive effort to make small changes. But that's not necessarily because the people themselves aren't using the best tools or anything like that. It has to do with the organizational structure. So speed to market, like tools and how much you're using AI, like that does play into it. But like, if your organizational structure is such that like interdepartmental communication is restricted, you have an extreme hierarchy that like there's going to be waiting time, like that's just going to slow you down.
Yeah, exactly. Bureaucracy, internal bureaucracy. The larger organization, the more internal friction there is, the more internal friction, the less competitive advantage you have, even if you have got the best technology. Yeah, totally right. Cool. Well, let's see what else we can. So we were talking about observability earlier, and there's a couple of other areas I didn't quite get to. And I want to talk about something of the area the area of non-ownership, which can be a problem as well, where people don't monitor stuff or don't have accountability for things. So we got up to content or orchestration and running of your schedules. Then there's a quality that we all know needs to be in place, especially with if we ever want to get any success out of generative AI. Data quality is now just so much more important. Then you've got two layers of quality. You've got the quality ingest, you've got the quality, I call it data degradation, the erosion of data's quality over time. And then you've got the who's using it, how they're using it, and what they're using it. And someone came up the other day. It was called someone called it the grey area between when the data is produced by the source systems and how it gets to the end consumer. And if it's not monitored, it's I call it the DMZ, the data demonetized zone. And I talk about metadata quite a bit. And I think that's the next area of improvements that we can make ourselves, is actually understanding all the different metadata that's out there to help us understand how we can improve or work better. And so without us actually having accountability or looking at what's going on with the pipelines, we're not going to get the best value out of them. So again, I think with having orchestration, what's going on between each of the steps, and it's explained.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that gets into too also like problem solving, because it's one thing to orchestrate something, but then it's another to have like notifications and alerting, and then you have to go and fix the problem if something goes wrong. And it's like, what do you look at? What does that process look like? Like, do you need to look at the most granular form of the data to fix it, or is it going to be you go to the metadata to see what's wrong? Like, where is it? So I think alerting is important. Anyone who can just like read different error messaging and knows what it all means, you're a better human than I am. I just look at it, I'm like, what's wrong? And I kind of like dig and
Yeah, no, it goes back to that the communication thing is when the user comes in and they just see their report saying data not refreshed, they don't know what piece the puzzle's broken or why they don't want to see an error message, a divide by zero error. You want to know what's wrong with the data and how you can get your report back. So
yeah, that's actually I remember there was a point of conversation at ThoughtSpot, because they added like KPI monitoring, and so you could see a percent change versus the last month. But if there was ever a zero involved in that calculation, what do you do? How would we handle that? So like that was a conversation, because at some point you don't want it to just not load. So what should we have it say instead?
Yeah, and it'll actually affect averages if you'd actually include do you treat the zeros as is a null and a zero the same? Oh, we can go into a big debate.
Oh man, that's that's a heavier conversation that I'm prepared for. But yeah.
Yeah, no, we'll leave that maybe for another time,
Definitely happy to come back whenever, talk about.
Yeah, well, no, I'll be definitely checking out some of your articles. There's I do like your memes that you've done in the past, and I'm appreciative of the theme when you sent me the the mean Data Streets themed one from Marky Mark, I think. So that was good. That was good fun.
That's part of my data storytelling, is like, and different people will have different levels of comfort with this. But for me, it's like breaking down somewhat of that. If there's some sort of formality and barrier of like, I'm a person, you're a person, we're going to work together, and like, let's have a good time while we're doing it. So if I can make you laugh, it makes my story more memorable. And that's how I like to make memes or jokes, is like, yeah, it's a joke, but there's also something important. Like there's a message with it too. So that's sort of my own personal style.
I agree. And when I see things that trigger like funny thoughts or something like that, I like doing it. And you're right. It's a story first, the mem second sort of thing. It's okay, oh yeah, that can help me tell this story. It's not, I'm not saying people do this, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's to go and get all the likes. Mine are normally quite. So quick. I first with the brain farts. I think we referred to this before, and I use these as I get something on mine, post it. Later on, it will go into an article. It'll go into something with more meaning and less spelling mistakes as well. But yeah, just those little things that trigger you, trigger thoughts is good. If it helps with the storytelling, why not use it? Why not use it?
Because that's how, if you think about how people learn, and this gets into like metacognition or like thinking about thinking. Like how do people learn things? Like there's certain mnemonics, certain alliteration. Like people build little jokes to remember processes better. So it's like I'm providing you with the way you're going to automatically learn something, like with a joke or with alliteration or something like that. So it's also breaking into like how people think and process things themselves anyway. So I'm just taking you another step there.
Yeah, no, I think with your background and from what you studied, yeah, I think that's a very good insight into it. And a lot of the things I've seen to have stumbled across is more being unconsciously or subconsciously. I've ended up doing things that seem to be the right way of doing it. But yeah, and I think what you just said there is bang on. Here. People like doing business with people, not just automated things. And I do feel, and I've had this now, is you get someone talks to you, they already feel they know you because they've interacted with you. They've either watched you on podcasts or they've seen your posts. They know a bit about you. So the conversations are normally much quicker, and you're already talking to like-minded people. And I think having you on the show, and we're already. I only started doing these not that long ago. The first one was in July, and we're already booked up to November now. And it goes every week after this week because, hey, well, let's hope people are watching it still. But yeah, and I think that's down to interacting with people over time, and people are happy to share the story. And they wouldn't have done that if they didn't know who I was. I think, why am I going to go on this Chris Tab guy that's just cold messaging me? Would I don't want to come on here? Yeah, you do it because you either built up a knowledge of that person, or you've got some connection or a shared view on stuff. So,
all the psychology of everything on LinkedIn and all of that fascinates me. I don't really talk about it much, but it is interesting. And I remember reaching out to you of like, hey, I see you started this. Like, I would love to be on sometime. I have some thoughts about things. And to people I'm closer with it in a business sense, like I've said, like I find this hilarious because in my mind, I'm no one. I'm a small fish. Like people don't know who I am. Like I happen to know Chris. But like I look at some of the other people you've had on and I'm like, wow, I'm seriously no one.
Well, the thing is, I think you will be at some stage anyway. You've got many. I'm old. I've been around a while. That's why everyone knows me. And you've got a long career ahead of you, and I'm sure you'll do very well from what I've seen and the conversation.
I hope so. I think it's yet to be determined. I will do my best. I will continue to make memes. I think that's like probably the best bet. Like no matter what I do, where I go, like I will continue to be funny.
That's good. Well, that's what we need. That's what the data world needs, a bit of entertainment. I think good old Fred Lardero he's one of the most entertaining guys out there. And again, that's just someone I've met via LinkedIn. I might have him on the show sometimes. He'll be good fun as well. So I think we're approaching the hour. But before I go, how can people find you? What you got going on? Any hashtags or anything that you want to highlight to the audience?
Sure. Definitely check out Shipyard. It's also Shipyard app if it doesn't come up. So Shipyard, data orchestration. So you can find me there. I'm at Aaron Post, ARYNNPOST on Twitter and also on Threads and also at Aaron on Blue Sky. If you have Blue Sky.
You got the lot.
Otherwise I'm here on LinkedIn, but I do post probably my juiciest thoughts on Twitter and Threads, whereas LinkedIn, I'm still funny, but like I'm not as unhinged on LinkedIn.
That's the best way. That's the best way. Well, thank you very much. So anyone that's about, I think the next show is in 2 weeks' time. So if anyone wants to tune in to Greg Cugliano, I can never pronounce. Sorry, Greg, I pronounced it wrong. Product guru and startup investor. I've known the guy for many years. LinkedIn voice, multiple years in a row. So I'm excited to have him on. And if anyone's not following him, he puts some great stuff out of industry trends and very, very insightful information. So I've been following him for a while. So make sure you tune in for that. And thank you very much, Aaron, for joining this show. It's been a great discussion, and I'm sure we'll speak again. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
No problem at all. It's an absolute pleasure. And I'll see everyone soon. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.